I was 26, single, and hopelessly searching for real love. Then he walked into my life, a 38-year-old billionaire, everything I didn't know I was missing. And in a moment, my heart didn't belong to me anymore. Stay with me. I promise this story will change how you see love forever. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe because you don't want to miss stories like this: real love, heartbreak, and unexpected twists. I was 26, a black woman with dreams, ambition, and a career that kept me busy most of the time. My apartment was small but cozy, filled with books, candles, and plants I barely remembered to water. Life felt organized, predictable, and safe, but love felt like a distant, impossible dream. I had been on every dating app, swiped through countless faces, and endured conversations that felt like interviews rather than sparks. People often asked me why I wasn't married yet, and I would smile politely, but inside, I felt that familiar pang of disappointment. It wasn't that I hadn't tried. I had. I just hadn't found anything real. Dates were awkward, often painfully so. Some men were charming at first, but the conversations were shallow, the laughs forced. There were the ones who couldn't look me in the eye, or worse, talked more about themselves than asked about me. I remember sitting across from one guy at a trendy coffee shop, nodding and laughing at things I didn't even care about, feeling more alone in a crowd than I did on any Friday night alone in my apartment. I started to wonder if maybe love wasn't meant for me. Not that I didn't deserve it, but maybe I wasn't the kind of woman who could be swept off her feet. Even in moments of fleeting connection, there was always a wall I couldn't quite break through. I craved someone who could see me, not just my smile, not just my ambition, but all of me, the messy parts too. I wanted someone who could hold a conversation that mattered, who could make me feel alive, who could challenge me and still make me feel safe. But those moments were rare. Mostly, I walked away feeling exhausted, questioning myself, and wondering if I was asking too much or too little. Friends would tell me to be patient, to enjoy the journey, to focus on my career. But the loneliness lingered like a shadow. I watched couples around me, happy and effortless, and I couldn't help but feel like I was living someone else's life story. It wasn't bitterness that filled me. It was longing, a quiet, persistent ache that whispered every night when I lay alone. I didn't want a fairy tale, really. I just wanted a love that felt real, that felt like it belonged to me as much as I belonged to it. Even with all my disappointments, I had hope tucked away somewhere deep inside. Maybe, just maybe, someone would come along who would change everything. Until that moment, though, I was navigating the world of first dates, awkward hellos, and polite goodbyes, holding on to the fragile belief that love wasn't just a story I read about. It was something I could actually live. And little did I know that someone was closer than I ever imagined, waiting to arrive when I least expected it. I never expected to meet someone like him. I had grown so used to the routine of disappointment that I almost didn't notice the moments when something or someone could actually stand out. But the moment he walked into my life, I felt it. He was 38, white, and yes, he carried the kind of confidence that could make a room stop for a second. But it wasn't arrogance. No, it was different. There was a subtle ease to him, a kind of calm self-assurance that didn't demand attention, but naturally drew it. And then there was the humility, the way he spoke to people as if they mattered, as if every word and glance carried respect. It was a combination I had never experienced before, and it hit me harder than I expected. At first, I couldn't place why I felt so drawn to him. It was more than curiosity. It was intrigue, that rare pull towards someone who seemed completely aligned with something inside me I hadn't even named yet. There was a spark in the way he listened, the way he tilted his head slightly when I spoke, like every word I said mattered. It felt surreal, almost like stepping into a world I hadn't dared to imagine existed for someone like me. I was used to shallow interactions, to men who only saw the surface, but with him, it was as if the air had shifted, the noise faded, and suddenly it was just him and me, in a space I hadn't realized I was craving. Everything about this encounter felt different. The usual awkwardness that accompanied my dates, the forced laughs and polite smiles, none of that existed with him. Instead, there was an easy rhythm, a natural back and forth that made me feel seen. He didn't need to impress me with flashy words or grand gestures. His energy alone was magnetic. I found myself laughing more freely than I had in years, feeling lighter in ways I couldn't explain. It was intoxicating, but not in a dizzying, overwhelming way. It was gentle, grounding, and yet thrilling all at once. By the end of that first meeting, I felt something shift inside me. It was more than just attraction, it was fascination, a quiet but insistent pull that told me this wasn't just another fleeting moment. I wanted to know everything about him, from the way he thought to the little habits that made him uniquely himself. For the first time in a long time, I felt an emotional connection that didn't feel forced or hurried. It felt like it had been waiting patiently for the right person to arrive. Walking away that day, I couldn't stop thinking about him. My heart raced in a way it hadn't in years, and my mind kept replaying little details. The way his smile curved naturally, the depth in his eyes when he asked a genuine question, the way he made even a simple conversation feel electric. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that unexpected encounter, was the beginning of something I couldn't have imagined. A connection that would pull me out of my routine, challenge everything I believed about love, and ultimately change the trajectory of my life. After that first encounter, everything seemed to shift. Suddenly, my days weren't just a blur of work, errands, and casual disappointment. They were threaded with anticipation, a quiet excitement that made even the simplest moments feel alive. We started talking more, sharing stories, memories, little quirks that only someone who truly listens would notice. I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone in years, laughing at jokes I barely registered in the past, and feeling a warmth in my chest I hadn't thought possible. With every conversation, every exchange, I felt layers of myself opening, revealing parts I had kept hidden even from myself. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some grand movie-style romance. It was small things that made my heart beat faster. The way he remembered what I liked for breakfast, the gentle tone he used when I told a story, the way he nudged me to speak my mind when I held back. There were little notes, text messages that made me smile uncontrollably, coffee delivered just because he remembered my favorite blend. These weren't gestures meant to impress anyone else. They were just genuine, and that sincerity hit me harder than any fancy date ever could. It made me question everything I thought I knew about love. And yet, with all of this sweetness, there was a voice in my head that couldn't quiet itself. Could someone like him really love someone like me? A black woman, single, complicated, with a life that didn't exactly fit the mold he seemed to live in. I caught myself analyzing every word, every gesture, wondering if I was reading too much into things or if this was actually real. My past disappointments made me cautious, skeptical even. Love had always seemed like something that happened to other people, something effortless and easy. And here I was, feeling this depth, this intensity, this undeniable pull, and scared to let myself fully feel it. But he didn't rush me. He didn't push or prod or make me feel like I had to meet some expectation. Instead, he matched my pace, letting the connection grow naturally, letting it breathe. That patience made me feel safe in a way I hadn't experienced before. I started to believe, tentatively, that maybe this was more than a fleeting infatuation. Maybe, just maybe, this could be something lasting. Then there were the quiet moments, walks where words weren't necessary, shared silences that felt like conversation, the subtle brush of his hand that lingered just enough to make me notice. Each moment, though small, layered over the next, and soon I realized my heart had started to follow a rhythm I couldn't control. The fascination had grown into something more profound, something that scared me with its intensity, but thrilled me with its possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I began to imagine a version of my life where love wasn't a question mark, where someone could see me fully, and I could see them in return. And it might just be enough. Even as our connection deepened, I couldn't shake the doubts that crept in like shadows at the edges of my mind. I found myself asking questions I didn't want to admit out loud. Could someone like him really love someone like me? A black woman, fiercely independent, with a life full of routines and boundaries that hadn't left much room for vulnerability. And yet, here he was, patient and attentive, showing me every day that he saw me for more than just what I presented to the world. Still, the voice of caution lingered, whispering reminders of every heartbreak, every failed connection, every time I had let my guard down and been burned. There were moments when my insecurities took over, little fears that seemed to explode out of nowhere. I worried about the age difference, about how people would perceive us, about whether our worlds were truly compatible. Was I overthinking, or was this a sign that love wasn't meant to be easy? I caught myself replaying conversations, analyzing every word, every glance, trying to read intentions that didn't need reading. It was exhausting, but I couldn't stop. My heart wanted to leap, but my mind demanded proof. And then there were the moments when I felt exposed in ways I had never felt before, sharing my past, my fears, my small regrets, the parts of me that were messy and imperfect felt terrifying. What if he decided I was too much, too complicated, too different from what he was used to? I had always protected myself, built walls that were strong enough to keep anyone from getting too close, but he seemed to notice them without judgment, approaching each one with a gentleness that made me question why I had ever thought love had to be a struggle. Even in the quiet moments, doubt lingered. When he wasn't around, I would catch myself imagining scenarios, rehearsing conversations, and overthinking the smallest interactions. But then he would call or send a simple message, a joke, a thoughtful question, or even just a good morning, and something inside me would relax. Slowly, ever so slowly, I began to trust not just him, but my own heart again. I started realizing that vulnerability wasn't weakness, and that perhaps love didn't have to be a battle or a test. It could simply exist, quietly and powerfully, in the spaces between two people who chose to show up for each other every day. And yet, the push and pull of fear and desire made my emotions feel like a storm. One moment, I would feel entirely secure in our connection, wrapped in the certainty of his attention and care. The next, my insecurities would roar back, threatening to undo the fragile trust I was building. I realized that this internal struggle wasn't just about him. It was about me, about letting go of the past, about learning to believe that I deserved a love that was real, expansive, and transformative. And for the first time in a long time, I began to understand that the greatest challenge of love wasn't finding it, it was allowing it in fully without holding anything back. As our connection grew, I realized that this wasn't just a crush or a fleeting infatuation. It was something far deeper, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. He had a way of making ordinary moments extraordinary, turning even simple conversations into experiences that lingered long after they ended. I remember the way he laughed at my smallest jokes, the way his eyes held mine with such intent that it felt like he could see every hidden corner of my heart. It was intoxicating, but not overwhelming. It was grounding, comforting, and thrilling all at once. There were moments when I caught myself thinking, could this really be happening to me? Every past disappointment, every heartbreak, every lonely night seemed to fade in the presence of what we were building together. It wasn't just the gestures, though those were endless and thoughtful. It was the authenticity behind them, the way he remembered the little details about me, the way he supported my ambitions without judgment, the way he held my hand in silence as if to say, I'm here, I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. These weren't grand romantic gestures meant to impress. They were sincere, intimate, and they made me feel more loved than I ever thought possible. I found myself letting go of old fears, slowly allowing him closer to the parts of me I had hidden away. I realized that love wasn't just about excitement or passion. It was about trust, respect, and the quiet assurance that someone would stand by you even when things weren't perfect. With him, I felt safe to dream, to hope, to be vulnerable without fear. I could laugh without pretense, cry without shame, and simply exist in a space where my heart was honored. And yet, the depth of my feelings was almost scary. I had been hurt before, and my heart had learned caution as a form of survival. But with him, I felt a shift, a recognition that love could also be transformative. It could heal old wounds, teach patience, and invite joy in ways I hadn't imagined. I began to notice the subtle changes in myself: a lighter step, a more open smile, a willingness to embrace life fully without overthinking every detail. Every conversation, every shared experience, every quiet glance added layers to the bond we were creating. I started imagining a future I had never dared to picture, one where love wasn't a fantasy, but a living, breathing reality I could touch, feel, and be a part of. The thought of losing him became unthinkable, not because of dependence, but because my life had expanded in ways I hadn't expected. By the time I fully accepted what was happening, I realized something profound. This love wasn't just changing how I felt about him, it was changing how I saw myself. I was no longer the cautious, hesitant woman who tiptoed through life waiting for love to arrive. I was someone capable of deep connection, someone who could be seen fully and loved completely. And in that realization, I finally understood the true power of love. It doesn't just sweep you off your feet, it transforms the very way you exist in the world. Just when I thought our love had settled into a rhythm, life reminded me that nothing truly comes without challenges. The outside world, with its judgments and assumptions, began to intrude in ways I hadn't anticipated. Friends whispered, family raised cautious eyebrows, and strangers seemed ready to question how someone like him could choose someone like me. It wasn't malicious. It was curiosity, skepticism, and maybe a little envy, but it made me hyper aware of the age difference, the lifestyle gap, and everything else that set us apart. For a moment, I wondered if love was truly enough to shield us from the opinions of everyone else. Then came the moments that tested our emotional resilience: a misread text, a small disagreement blown out of proportion, a fleeting insecurity that caught me off guard. I realized that love wasn't just about shared laughter or heartfelt confessions. It was about navigating friction, the moments that make your heart race not with excitement, but with fear. I caught myself questioning whether I was enough, whether he truly understood the weight of my world, my insecurities, my history. But even in these moments of doubt, he was unwavering. His patience wasn't passive, it was active, deliberate, showing me that he was committed not only to the love we shared, but to me as a person. We had conversations that went deep into the night, unraveling fears we hadn't even known how to articulate. I shared my insecurities about being judged, my doubts about whether someone of his stature could ever fully accept my life as it was, and he listened, not with defensiveness or distraction, but with care. He held my hand, looked me in the eye, and reminded me that love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other every day, through every uncertainty and misstep. That simple idea, choosing each other, became our anchor, and there were moments that reminded me of the extraordinary connection we had. The small victories that proved our bond was real. A text just to check in, a coffee delivered on a busy day, a quiet laugh shared over nothing at all. Those small acts weren't just gestures, they were proof that love doesn't need to be grandiose to be profound. It's in the consistency, the understanding, the willingness to meet someone halfway, even when life is messy. By the end of these trials, I began to notice a transformation in myself. I wasn't just surviving our challenges, I was thriving within them. I realized that obstacles didn't weaken love. They tested it, honed it, made it stronger. And in navigating these moments together, I discovered that our connection wasn't just about the spark that brought us together. It was about the depth that allowed us to stand together, unshaken, even when the world seemed determined to challenge us. Through every misstep and every triumph, I learned that love isn't simple, but when it's real, it's unshakable. And by facing life's obstacles together, we weren't just surviving, we were building something enduring, something that could carry us through anything, because it was forged in trust, patience, and an unwavering choice to be there for each other. By the time I reached this point, I realized something profound. Love had changed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I was no longer the hesitant, guarded woman who tiptoed through life, always questioning whether she was enough. I had discovered that real love doesn't just sweep you off your feet, it roots itself deeply, reshaping your world, giving you courage you didn't know you had. With him, I had learned to trust again, not just in him, but in myself, in my own worth, in the possibility of a future that felt both exciting and safe. We had faced our doubts, insecurities, and external judgments together, and in every challenge, we found new ways to support each other, to grow closer, to understand not just the surface of who we were, but the layers beneath. There were days when I still caught myself thinking, can someone like him really love someone like me? But now the question had softened, replaced by gratitude and awe. I understood that love wasn't about perfection. It was about being seen, being chosen, being held with care, even when life tested us. As I reflected on everything, I felt a sense of peace that I had never known before. This wasn't the love of a storybook or a fleeting romance. It was living, breathing, real, and it had become a part of me. I found myself dreaming about a future I once thought impossible, quiet mornings together, laughter that filled our home, conversations that went on for hours, shared ambitions, and support that never wavered. It was a future built not on fantasy, but on trust, mutual respect, and an unspoken promise to choose each other every day. And yet, this new beginning wasn't just about him. It was about me, too, about recognizing my own strength, my capacity to love deeply, and my ability to be loved fully in return. I had grown in ways I couldn't have imagined before meeting him. The woman who once doubted her worth, who feared heartbreak at every turn, was now capable of embracing love with open arms and an open heart. I finally understood that allowing myself to be vulnerable didn't make me weak. It made me alive. It made me whole. Now, as I look back on the journey that brought us here, I feel a profound sense of gratitude. Every disappointment, every awkward date, every fear that once held me back led me to this moment. And in this love, I found more than passion or excitement, I found stability, understanding, joy, and the rare kind of connection that transforms not just your heart, but your entire life. This is not the end of my story. It's the beginning of a life I never thought I could have. A life where love isn't a question mark, but a constant, living presence. And as we continue to grow together, I carry with me the knowledge that when you open your heart fully, when you trust in love, the rewards are beyond anything you could ever imagine. For me, that reward came in the form of a man who chose me, who loved me without hesitation, and who showed me that true love is as transformative as it is enduring. And now, with him, I am ready to embrace every moment, every joy, every challenge, knowing that we will face it all together. If this story touched your heart, hit like, subscribe, and share. Love can surprise you when you least expect it, and I want you to believe in it too.